Before we begin tonight's story, turn off the lights, put your headphones on, and if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from tonight. Because what you're about to hear isn't a legend. It's a forgotten piece of American history, a story buried beneath ice, silence, and the bones of the missing. This is The Howl Above Blackridge Mountain, based on the events of 1903. Told by the last man who made it out alive. They told me not to come here. Said the mountain had a hunger not for food, but for voices. I didn't listen. I was a journalist, chasing stories of the missing miners near the Appalachian Divide. 7 men gone without a trace. No bodies, no clues, only whispers. The train dropped me at a small station called Harper's Bend, a forgotten corner of Virginia buried beneath sheets of white. The air stung my lungs the moment I stepped off. The station master wouldn't even look at me, just pointed toward the hills and muttered, "Blackridge, don't take kindly to strangers." The townsfolk stared as I passed, not curious, afraid, like I was already dead. The snow deepened as I climbed the trail up the ridge. Pines bowed heavy under the weight, creaking as if the forest itself breathed. Every sound, every crunch beneath my boots felt watched. By dusk, I found a small cabin marked R. Lawson, surveyor, half buried in frost but unlocked. I made camp inside. That night, I built a fire and wrote in my journal. Day 1. Arrived at Blackridge. Locals hostile, cold, unbearable. The air smells of iron. As the flames crackled, a faint sound drifted in from outside. A low, hollow hum rolling through the woods, not the wind. No wind carries a voice. Then it said my name, just once. Soft, drawn out like a sigh through the trees. I froze. The flames dimmed. The air turned to ice. The hum faded, but the echo of my name lingered, whispered back by the mountain itself. Morning came gray and silent. Snow had drifted through cracks in the walls, covering half the floor. When I opened the door, I saw footprints, small, bare, and human, leading away from the cabin. I followed them into the trees. They ended abruptly at a cliff edge. No signs of a fall. No blood. No drag marks. Just stopped. And below, nothing but mist. That was when I first felt it, that crawling certainty that Blackridge was alive, watching, listening. I returned to town to question the sheriff, a heavy-set man named Halden, with eyes like dull steel. When I mentioned the footprints, he barely looked up from his drink. "Don't go chasing ghosts," he said. "Up there, the snow plays tricks on the mind." "But 7 men are gone," I told him. He leaned closer, his voice dropping low. "They ain't gone. They've been taken." Before I could ask what he meant, he stood up and left. That night, the wind picked up again. And through the storm, I heard it whisper the sheriff's name. I spent the next day following the miners' trail, a narrow path winding along the ridge. Their camp was still there, half swallowed by snow, tents flapping open, lanterns swinging weakly. Inside one tent, I found a journal frozen to the ground. The last entry read, "Voices from the ridge, calling from above, not below, never below." Carved into the nearby rock were 3 words, uneven and desperate. Not below, above. I didn't understand then, but I would, soon. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hum returned louder, closer, And this time, it wasn't alone. Footsteps in the snow. Soft, bare, circling the cabin. Then a single knock. On the back wall, my lamp flickered. Through the howling wind came a woman's voice. Daniel. My name. But no one here knew it. I pulled back the curtain. Through the storm, I saw her, a figure standing between the pines. Still, pale, hair blowing in. The wind, eyes faintly glowing. She lifted her hand and pointed straight at me. The lantern went out. The hum swelled, a chorus of voices vibrating through the mountain itself, and then silence. Only the faint whisper of the wind through the cracks in the wall. Welcome home. That was my first night on Blackridge Mountain. The first time it called my name, and not the last. Next time, I'll tell you what I found buried in the snow, and the thing that watches from above. If you've made it this far, you're braver than most. Would you dare spend one night on Blackridge Mountain? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next episode, the mountain starts to scream. Would you like me to continue right away with episode 2? Footprints that lead nowhere? In this exact same cinematic style? No narrator? Full atmospheric storytelling? The storm didn't stop for 3 days. Snow fell thick and steady, muting every sound. But the low groan of wind through the pines. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again. That same whisper, calling my name through the frost. By the morning of the 4th day, the firewood was nearly gone. I decided to go back to the miners' camp to see what else I could find. Maybe clues, maybe bodies, anything that explained what this place was. But when I stepped outside, the footprints were back. Not the small ones I'd seen before. These were larger, bare feet, deep impressions leading away from the cabin, and just like before, they stopped, right at the cliff's edge. I leaned forward, peering through the swirling mist below. It wasn't a drop into emptiness. There was something down there, something moving. At first, I thought it was snow, shifting, sliding against the rock. Then, it opened its eyes. 2 faint lights, pale, distant, and staring straight up at me. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, breath clouding in the frozen air. When I looked again, the lights were gone. Only the sound remained, a faint hum rising from the fog. I spent most of that day at the old mining tunnels. The entrance was buried under layers of ice, but I found a narrow crack where the mountain breathed warm air. It was subtle, but I felt it like the mountain itself was alive beneath my hands. When I held my lantern near the opening, the flame fluttered wildly, then bent inward toward the darkness, like something inside was pulling it. I whispered into the tunnel, half joking, half terrified. "Is anyone down there?" The mountain answered, a whisper, my own voice, repeating the words back to me. "Is anyone down there?" Fainter, slower, as if sinking into stone. I hurried back before sunset. The cold hit harder after dark. But it wasn't the chill that scared me. It was the quiet. The forest went still. No birds, no cracking branches, only that heavy silence pressing down on everything, like the world itself was holding its breath. Inside the cabin, I sat by the fire and tried to write. My hands shook. Every creak outside made me pause, listening, until I heard it faint steps in the snow. Not wandering this time, approaching. I blew out the lantern, crouched near the window, and waited. Through the curtain, I saw a shape, tall, broad shoulders, a man. He was dragging something behind him, a long bundle wrapped in fabric, leaving a dark trail in the snow. I forced myself to open the door. "Hey!" The man stopped, but he didn't turn around. He dropped the bundle and walked straight into the trees, vanishing between them without a sound. When I reached the thing he left behind, I realized it wasn't a bundle. It was a coat. Sheriff Halden's coat. Inside the pocket was a folded note, barely legible through the frost. "The ridge screams at night. Don't answer. Don't look up." That was all. But as I read those words, the mountain groaned. A deep, rumbling growl that made the ground tremble beneath my boots. And then the screaming started. It came from the ridge far above, a raw, piercing wail that tore through the night air. It wasn't human. I ran inside, slammed the door, braced it shut. The sound kept rising, shifting into voices, hundreds of them, crying, begging, whispering over one another. Until I heard mine, among them, screaming from somewhere deep inside the mountain. At dawn, I found no trace of what happened. No tracks, no blood, no coat. The snow had swallowed everything. But the scream, it still echoed in my head. And that night, when I stared into the darkness outside the cabin, I saw movement high above the ridge, a figure standing perfectly still at the peak. Even from that distance, I could tell it was watching me. And when the wind shifted, I heard it faint but clear carried through the frozen air. "You shouldn't have come here. I packed my things before daylight. I needed to reach the next town anywhere but here. But when I followed the trail back toward Harper's Bend, it wasn't there. The path was gone. The trees were different. Every turn led me back to the same cabin, no matter how far I walked. That's when I realized the mountain wasn't just watching. It was keeping me. By nightfall, I stopped fighting it. I sat by the dead fire, listening to the faint hum rolling through the valley. It had rhythm now, a slow, steady beat, like a heart, and beneath it a whisper I could barely make out, a name. Not mine this time. Someone else's. I opened my journal, pressed the pencil to the page, and waited. The name came again, clearer, a woman's. Mary Danton. The name of the first missing villager. And just before the candle went out, I heard her voice, right behind me, whispering the same question, over and over. "Why did you bring the light?" Wind rises. Faint feminine laughter echoes, then fades. Into static. The next morning, the candle was gone. Only a single line was left in the frost on the window, scratched by a finger, crooked and uneven. Not below, above. Something is waiting on the ridge. It knows my name, and now it knows I'm listening. Next time, I'll tell you what I found in the tunnels, and why the mountain breathes. If you're still here, tell me. Would you answer if the mountain called your name? Comment below. And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next episode, we go inside. The storm broke on the 5th night. The sky opened like torn fabric, spilling light across the snow. For the first time in days, I could see the ridge clearly and the ruins of the miners' camp perched against it like a scar. Something about the silence felt wrong, too clean, too expectant. I knew I had to go back. The air was bitter, sharp enough to cut. The trail wound through a grove of blackened pines, each trunk marked with strange burns, that climbed upward like the trees had been touched by lightning. but the skies above were clear. When I reached the camp, the snow had swallowed most of it. Canvas tents stood half-collapsed, their corners stiff with ice. Lantern poles leaned at crooked angles, their glass cracked and blackened. 7 tents. 7 missing men. Inside the first tent, I found nothing but frost and shredded bedding. The second had a broken shovel, its handle splintered as if someone had used it to defend themselves. The third, a torn coat and a pair of boots, both filled with snow. Then I found the fourth, and I stopped breathing. A lantern still burned inside, faint, flickering blue instead of yellow. And hanging above it, on the inside of the tent wall, was a pattern drawn in soot, circles, 7 of them, all connected by a single line that ran upward as if reaching toward the top of the tent. Above that, carved into the canvas itself, were 3 words. They went up. I stepped back slowly, my boot crunching over something buried just under the snow. When I brushed it aside, I found a pocket watch, still ticking, frozen at 12:03. The hum started again, faint at first, rolling under the ground like a pulse through the mountain. It rose through my feet, my bones, my teeth, until I could hear whispers inside my skull. Not words, just breath. Then the air changed. The temperature dropped so fast that frost crept up the sides of the tents like veins. The lantern's flame turned white. And from the corner of my eye, I saw movement inside one of the tents. A shadow, standing perfectly still. I called out, "Who's there?" No answer. Just the slow, dragging scrape of fabric, like someone shifting inside. I reached for the flap, pulled it open. Empty. Only a single photograph lay on the ground, faded, cracked. 7 men, smiling. Behind them, the ridge and something else. A shape standing among the trees, too tall, too narrow, almost human, but not. The wind picked up again, swirling snow around me until the camp disappeared into a white haze. I started to leave, but something caught my ear. A faint tapping from inside one of the tents. 3 slow taps, pause, then 2 more. When I pulled back the flap, I saw a tin cup hanging from the ceiling beam. It was moving on its own, tapping against the pole. Like a code. 3, 2, 3. I wrote it down without thinking. Later, I realized those were the same numbers etched on the back of the pocket watch. The hum built again, louder, shaking the ground beneath my boots. And then I heard them, the miners. Their voices echoed through the wind, faint but unmistakable, calling. Not for help, but for me. They were singing, a broken, wordless tune that rose and fell like breath. And in between the notes, I could hear something else, a second sound, deeper, older. The mountain, answering. I turned to leave, but the path I'd come through was gone. The snow had shifted, swallowing everything but a new trail that led higher, up toward the ridge. I followed it, each step heavier than the last. The hum vibrated through the soles of my boots. The trees grew thinner. The air turned metallic. At the top, I found it. A ring of black stones, perfectly round, scorched into the snow. Inside it, 7 melted lanterns, still burning faintly beneath the ice. And in the center, a mound of frozen earth, steaming in the cold air. When I brushed the snow aside, I found bones. Not human, not animal. Something in between. Long, curved, hollow, like the ribs of something that had never belonged on this mountain. The hum stopped. The air went dead silent. Then a voice rose from behind me, hoarse, broken, trembling. "Don't touch it." I spun around. A man stood there, clothes torn, skin gray, eyes wild with frost. "Who are you?" I asked. He shook his head. "They hear through the flame." I took a step, closer. "What flame?" He pointed to the lanterns, then to the ground. "Every light we bring feeds it." Before I could speak again, he turned and bolted into the woods. I tried to follow, but he moved faster than any man I've ever seen. Within seconds, he was gone. Only the snow remained, and that faint, low hum returning beneath my feet. By the time I reached the cabin again, night had fallen. The pocket watch still ticked 12:03. Always 12:03. I tried to sleep, but the wind outside carried whispers, dozens of them, weaving together like threads. They weren't calling my name anymore. They were counting. 7 voices, repeating the same rhythm. 3, 2, 3. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't outside anymore. It was inside my head, and when I closed my eyes, I saw them. 7 men, standing around the circle of stones, their mouths open, their faces stretched in silent screams, and above them something huge. Something pale leaning down from the darkness, like the mountain itself was bending to listen. Its breath rattled through the trees. The snow began to fall upward, and then everything went black. I woke by the dead fire. The pocket watch lay beside me, still ticking, 12:03, and burned into the wood floor beside it, a single word: return. The camp is gone now. I went back this morning and there's nothing there. No tents, no footprints, no bones. Just flat, untouched snow. But sometimes, when I stand at the ridge and listen, I still hear that faint rhythm. 3, 2, 3. And I wonder if that's not a code at all, but a heartbeat. Next time, I'll tell you what I found deeper inside the tunnels, and what happens when the mountain finally breathes. If you're still here, tell me, would you go up there if it called your name? Leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe, because in the next episode, the mountain opens its mouth. Snow has a way of keeping secrets. It buries the truth until it forgets what it's hiding. But on this mountain, the snow doesn't stay still for long. When I woke that morning, the wind had carved the drifts into shapes, narrow spires like teeth jutting from the white earth. The ridge looked alive, breathing, waiting. The watch still ticked. 12:03, always. I packed my lantern, my map, and what courage I had left, and I started toward the tunnels. The path twisted upward through a corridor of dead pines, their branches cracking softly under the weight of ice. Every step echoed. I kept thinking about the man who'd warned me. They hear through the flame. I almost left the lantern behind, but the dark between the trees looked thick enough to choke on, so I lit it. Just one spark. Just enough to see. That was my mistake. At first, the light flickered normally, but as I climbed higher, the flame began to pulse like it was breathing with me. Every exhale I gave, it dimmed. Every inhale, it brightened. By the time I reached the ridge, the flame wasn't mine anymore. It was alive, and that's when I heard it. Not a howl this time. Not wind. A scream. Long, broken, human. It rolled down the ridge like thunder, echoing through the valley until the trees themselves seemed to tremble. I ran. The sound led me to a narrow ledge where the snow had collapsed into a deep pit. I leaned over and saw something flickering at the bottom, another lantern, buried halfway in the ice. I climbed down carefully, each movement cracking through layers of frost. The air smelled strange, like metal and burnt salt. When I reached the bottom, I brushed the snow away and froze. It wasn't a lantern. It was a helmet. A miner's helmet, the kind they wore in the early 1900s. But the lamp on it still glowed faintly, though no flame burned inside. And next to it, a skull, half buried, mouth open wide as if frozen mid-scream. I backed away slowly, and that's when I noticed something else. There were handprints in the ice, dozens of them, pressed deep into the walls all around me, each one reaching upward. And through the thin sheet of frozen blue, I could see shapes, faces, not carved, not imagined, real, men, their eyes open, their mouths wide, their bodies twisted as if caught in the act of climbing, and then frozen there, inches from the surface. I touched the ice. It was warm, and from deep inside it, I heard the faintest whisper, a single word repeated over and over again. Up. The scream came again, closer this time. I turned, and the lantern in my hand went out. Darkness swallowed everything. The whispering grew louder, circling me, like voices moving just behind my ears. I felt something brush my coat, something cold. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on something hard, a wooden beam sticking out of the snow. It was part of an entrance, a collapsed tunnel. I dug with my hands until I found the old sign above it, the letters barely legible. Ridge shaft, closed 1889, 1889. That was the year the miners vanished. I had no light, but I could feel warmth leaking from inside the shaft. And something else, a slow, rhythmic vibration. Like a heartbeat. I should have turned back. But something in that sound pulled me closer. I crawled inside. The tunnel was narrow, the air thick with moisture. The deeper I went, the louder the hum grew, until it filled my chest. Then I saw them, not men, not anymore. Bodies half fused with the rock, their skin stretched thin across stone like paper left in rain. Their mouths moved, but no sound came. Their eyes glowed faintly pale blue, like dying stars, and through the cracks between them, I saw something vast moving deeper in the dark. It wasn't crawling, it was breathing. The whole mountain shifted with it. Every exhale made the tunnel walls flex like lungs. And that's when I realized this wasn't a mine. It was a mouth. The scream came again, not from outside, but from below. The floor split open. A burst of heat surged up, carrying a stench of sulfur and something older. I crawled backward as the ground cracked apart and a light spilled out from the depths. Not fire. Something else. Blue-white, like lightning trapped beneath the earth. It flickered in time with the ticking of my pocket watch. 12:03. 12:03. 12:03. The hum turned into a rhythm. 3, 2, 3. The mountain was calling again. I don't remember how I escaped. Only that I woke on the ridge with snow in my mouth and blood on my hands. The tunnel was gone. The hole sealed shut as if it had never existed. But something was different now. The snow wasn't falling anymore. It was rising. lifting in tiny spirals around me, like ash caught in a slow wind. And for the first time, I saw it, high above the ridge in the sport, swirling mist a shadow. Massive, moving against the clouds, it had a shape, a form, a presence that stretched across the entire mountain. And when it turned its head, the storm followed. I ran back to camp, tripping through the snow until I reached my cabin. Inside, I collapsed beside the fire. For hours, I sat there shaking until I realized the floorboards beneath me were warm. I lifted the rug. The word was still there, return. But now, a second word had appeared beneath it, listen. That night, as I tried to rest, I heard a sound beneath the cabin floor. Slow, scraping, like something dragging itself through the dirt below me. When I leaned close, I heard breathing, and a whisper. You opened it. Wind rises. Faint rumble of something vast moving beneath the snow. The mountain remembers me now, and it wants me back. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when I dig again, and the earth finally answers. For 3 nights, I didn't sleep. The scratching beneath the cabin floor wouldn't stop. Sometimes it came slow, a single drag across the boards. Sometimes it came fast, furious, like a hand trying to claw its way out. By the 3rd night, I couldn't take it anymore. I lifted the floorboard, and that's when the smell hit me. Damp earth, old iron, and something sweet, like rotting pine sap. The hole below wasn't large, but it went down farther than any cellar should. I tied my lantern to a rope and lowered it. The flames swayed and then vanished into the black. When I pulled it back up, the glass was cracked, and something had written on the inside of the glass. Listen. That word again, carved like it had been waiting. So I did. I listened. And under the hum of the mountain, I heard something else. A voice, distant, muffled, but human. It was singing, a lullaby. The same tune the miners used to hum in the saloons before heading to work, a song about home. But this version sounded wrong. The words stretched, slowed, almost fed upon. I don't remember climbing down. I just remember the cold, and how the sound got louder with every step. The passage opened into a chamber of stone, walls slick with frost. My lantern barely lit the edges. At the center stood a wooden table. On it, a collection of objects laid out with precision. A pocket knife, a rosary, a baby's rattle carved from bone, a torn page from a ledger, and at the very end, a set of 7 teeth arranged in a circle. My hands trembled. These weren't just artifacts. They were offerings, and in the wall above them, a fissure pulsed faintly with blue light. The hum came from inside it, rhythmic, steady, like the heart of something still alive. I reached out. The light flared. For a split second, I saw faces pressing against the stone from the other side. The miners, mouths open, eyes wide. And then a hand shot through the crack, grabbed my wrist, and pulled. I screamed and yanked back, falling hard against the floor. When I looked again, the wall was solid, but my arm was bleeding. 3 long slashes, deep and deliberate. They hadn't tried to hold me. They'd marked me. The hum changed pitch. It rose higher, sharper, until it felt like a blade cutting through my skull. Then, from the dark corner of the chamber, something moved. A figure, small, crawling. At first, I thought it was an animal, but then it lifted its head. It was the man from before, the one who'd warned me. Only now, His skin had gone completely gray, his eyes milky white, his mouth trembling as if trying to remember how to form words. He whispered, "They're awake now." I crawled toward him. "What's awake?" He looked at me, jaw shaking. "The mountain's lungs. We opened them." Before I could ask more, he turned his head sharply, like he heard something behind me. Then he screamed. Not a human scream, something raw, animal, filled with terror. He clawed at the stone, trying to climb upward, but the wall behind him began to move, breathing, swelling, then splitting open like skin. Something pushed through, wet, shining. It looked like bone at first, until it bent. It wasn't a bone. It was a rib, long as a man, curved like a hook. It caught the screaming man and dragged him back into the wall, as if the mountain itself was swallowing him whole. The stone closed behind him, and silence fell again. I ran. The tunnels twisted, new passages opening and closing behind me like living veins. The hum followed. Not from below, from inside me. When I finally reached the cabin, dawn was bleeding across the horizon. I slammed the floorboard shut, nailed it down, and threw salt across the seams. The air was still thick with that humming. But now it came from outside, from the ridge. I stepped out onto the snow, and there, carved into the white by the wind, were 7 new circles, each one pulsing faintly with blue light. Each, one connected by a single thin trail of ash leading toward the ridge. The same pattern I'd seen drawn in soot in the miner's tent. They weren't symbols, they were maps. It started with the wind. Not a storm wind, something thicker, heavier, the kind that doesn't move across the world but through it. When it came, the snow didn't fall, it rose. Grains of white spinning upward in lazy spirals, drawn toward the ridge like dust to a lung. The mountain was inhaling again. All night the sound built under the ground, a low, steady moan that trembled through the cabin walls. The pocket watch on my desk shook with every pulse. 12:03. Never another time. I packed what I could. The map, a coil of rope, the blue lantern, and the knife that had belonged to one of the miners. If the mountain wanted me below, I'd see what it wanted me to find. The path back up was unrecognizable. Trees had shifted positions. Boulders I'd used as markers were gone, swallowed by drifts. Only the ash trail remained, glowing faintly in the dark, a thread of light guiding me toward the ridge. Each step closer, the air grew warmer. Not summer warm, breath warm, as though the snow itself exhaled against my skin. At the crest I found the source. A fissure had opened where the old ridge shaft once lay sealed. Steam poured from it in long sighs. Inside, I saw faint movement, as if the mountain's own ribs were flexing just beneath the stone. I lowered the lantern. The flame turned black. And then it began to whisper again. Not words, pulses. 3, 2, 3. The heartbeat rhythm. I stepped through. The tunnel had changed. Where there'd been rock, there was now something else, smooth, slick, glistening with frost. The walls pulsed faintly with light, like veins illuminated from within. When I touched one, warmth rushed through my arm. It felt alive. Deeper in, I found remnants of the miners' camp pickaxes, bent into circles, shovels, fused to the floor, scraps of cloth still trembling as if caught in breath. And in the center of the passage, a figure waited. A woman. Her skin was white as ash, her hair matted with ice. She wore a miner's coat, but her eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark. She smiled when she saw me. You came down when it called. Her voice wasn't an echo. It came from the walls around us. Every syllable rippled outward through the stone. "What is this place?" I asked. She tilted her head. "You're standing inside the mouth." The hum rose again, low, rising, endless. The walls expanded around us, like a chest taking breath. Far below, something shifted, a sound like hundreds of stones grinding together in slow rhythm. "The miners? They fed it," she said. Her smile vanished. "So do you." Before I could speak, she pressed her hand to my chest. The air left my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't breathe at all. Then she leaned close, whispering into my ear. "Listen." The walls turned translucent. Behind them, I saw the shadows of men, their bodies stretched, moving within the stone like fish beneath ice. Each one mouthed the same word: "Breathe." The sound merged into a single exhale that shook the ground. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cracks spidered across the floor. And in that instant, I understood the mountain wasn't a tomb. It was a living thing, and the missing weren't dead. They were part of it. Every scream I'd heard was the sound of it learning how to inhale. The woman stepped backward into the wall. Her body dissolved into the stone like smoke. Before she vanished completely, she whispered one last thing. "Next time it exhales, run." The air pressure changed. The flame of my lantern bent inward, shrinking until it was a single blue point. Then, all at once, it blew out. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Then, the exhale came. It wasn't wind. It was force. A rush of heat and noise that threw me off my feet and hurled me back through the tunnel. I landed hard on the snow outside as the fissure exploded open behind me. A column of white steam shot into the sky, twisting and roaring. The snow around it melted instantly, revealing dark stone shaped like vertebrae. For the first time, I saw the spine of the mountain, and it was moving. I ran until my lungs burned. The sound chased me all the way down the slope, a deep, endless sigh that seemed to pull at the world itself. When I looked back, the ridge was gone. In its place stood a new rise of earth, taller, darker, still shifting. The mountain had changed shape. It had grown. I reached the cabin just before dawn. Everything inside was coated with a fine layer of black dust, soot, ash, maybe something else. On the wall above the fireplace, new words had appeared in the soot lines. "Not yet exhaled." That was 2 nights ago. Since then, every breath I take feels borrowed. Every time I close my eyes, I dream of lungs made of stone. And somewhere inside those lungs, I can hear voices, hundreds now, whispering my name with every inhale. Wind rises. A faint rumble shakes the ground. The mountain hasn't finished breathing, and when it exhales again, something's coming out. And the trail wasn't finished yet. That night, I burned the cabin's lantern. The flame turned blue. It flickered, stretched, and whispered. Not a voice this time, a message. Below us. They breathe below us. I think the mountain isn't just alive. I think it's hungry. And every man who's gone missing since 1880 is still inside it. Their voices echo through its lungs. And now, somehow, they've remembered mine. Wind howls, deep rumbling beneath the ground. Wood creaks as the cabin shifts. The earth hasn't stopped moving since. Every night, the floor shakes, the snow rises, and the ridge screams back. Next time, I'll show you what happens when the mouth finally opens and the mountain exhales. The morning after the mountain breathed, the snow was gone. Not melted, gone. Swallowed, vanished, as if it had never fallen. The ridge had changed shape entirely. It rose higher now, black against the pale sky, jagged like broken teeth. I didn't wait. I left the cabin before dawn, following the faint trail of ash left in the exhale. And that's when I saw them. At the base of the ridge, the first figures appeared through the mist. 7 men. Their boots covered in frost, clothes shredded, faces pale, almost transparent, eyes wide and blank. But they weren't dead, at least, not in the way we understand life. They moved slowly, awkwardly, limbs stiff, as if learning how to walk again. And each step they took left a depression in the earth that glowed faintly blue. I froze. One turned toward me. It was the man from the tunnels, the one who had warned me. But his mouth didn't move. Instead, a voice echoed from somewhere beneath. The snow. Come, join us. I stumbled back. My lantern shook in my hands. The flame bent violently, stretching toward them. It wasn't light anymore. It was a tether, pulling me. The man took a step forward, then another, and another. I ran. The ridge was alive, not just in the tunnels, not just in the stones. The mountain itself pulsed with every heartbeat of the men crawling out. The ground beneath my boots shifted, small stones lifting like lungs inhaling. I glanced back. All 7 were moving in unison now, their pace uncanny, unnatural. The blue glow of their footprints stretched back into the valley, and I realized with horror wherever they walked, the snow melted into black ash. I reached the cabin, slammed the door, tried to block it, but the ash from their steps seeped through the cracks, curling like fingers around the floorboards. I heard them at the window, soft tapping, not on the glass. Inside my head, why did you wake us? I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn the cabin down, but I knew it wouldn't stop them. The exhale had done more than release them. It had changed them. The miners weren't alive. Not fully. Their bodies were vessels, empty shells carrying the mountain's breath inside them. And with every step, the ridge itself grew taller, the air thicker, the world smaller. I watched in horror as one of them pressed a hand against the wall. The wood bulged, then cracked. A low hum rolled through the cabin, vibrating through my bones. Then another reached toward me. I fled again, running toward the valley. The wind picked up. Snow swirled, but this time, it carried a smell I'd never encountered before. Metal, earth, something alive, like blood and frost. The men followed, never stopping, never tiring. By the time I reached the trees, my lungs burned, my legs ached, but I dared to look back. They had stopped at the base of the ridge, standing in a line like statues. But their eyes glowed faintly blue, fixed on me. And then the wind whispered louder than ever before. Not words, not language. A single, sustained exhale stretching across the entire valley. It was the mountain itself. I don't know how long I ran. Hours, days. Time doesn't behave normally near the ridge anymore. I finally returned to the cabin, alone. Everything inside was frozen in black frost. On the wall, new words appeared in the soot. They have learned to walk. That night, I couldn't sleep. Outside, the exhale returned. Long, slow, almost patient. And I understood the truth. The mountain doesn't just take, it teaches. Every missing person who comes back is a lesson in obedience. Every breath it exhales is training. And the ridge, it waits for the next lesson. Wind rises. Faint scraping of stone against stone. Distant whispers echo in the valley. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when it decides to reach beyond the ridge. When the mountain's sick stay, breath spreads into the forest. And what becomes of those who stay too close? By the time I returned to Harper's Bend, something had already changed. The woods surrounding the town didn't look the same. Trees leaned inward, as if listening. Branches curved unnaturally, scratching at the sky. Even the snow, it trembled. The townspeople didn't notice, or maybe they did. I couldn't tell anymore. I had learned to keep my mouth shut, to watch and listen, because every sound carried the mountain's rhythm. 3, 2, 3. I ventured into the forest. The ash trail from the exhale led me there, like a thin finger pointing into the unknown. Every step made the ground pulse, soft at first, then stronger, like the heartbeat of something alive under the earth. I noticed the animals were gone. No birds, no squirrels. Even the wind seemed cautious, weaving around the trunks like it feared waking something. And then I heard it. A low inhaling, not from the mountain now, from the forest itself. The trees moved, not with wind, but with intent. Branches reached toward me, curling like fingers. Roots writhed just beneath the surface. The ground shifted, forming small ridges, tiny mounds that seemed like lungs expanding under my feet. Every time I breathed, the forest matched me. Inhale, it drew in. Exhale, it exhaled back. I tried to step carefully, but the snow beneath me collapsed, revealing hollow tunnels beneath. From them came faint blue glows and whispers, hundreds now. Voices from the ridge, from the miners, from the very mountain. Join us. Breathe. Below. I climbed a small hill to get my bearings. From the top, I saw the ridge. It pulsed faintly beneath the morning light. And now, trails of blue light stretched from it, like veins spreading into the forest, crawling toward Harper's Bend. It wasn't just the missing anymore. It was expanding. I watched in horror as a deer walked into the ash trail. It stopped, took a step forward, and then its body shivered, bones creaking. Its eyes glowed pale blue. It moved into the forest, perfectly still, but alive, or something alive within it. I ran. Every tree seemed to lean toward me. Roots erupted from the snow, curling like tendrils, trying to snare my legs. Branches scratched at my face and hands. Every inhale I took was mirrored by the forest. Every exhale returned as a gasp of cold wind, full of voices. And then I saw them. Figures emerging from the shadows between the trunks. 7 men, first the miners, returned from the ridge. Then more, their bodies twisted, half human, half something else. Skin pale, almost translucent, eyes glowing faintly, moving with the same rhythm as the mountain. 3, 2, 3. I hid behind a tree. The forest seemed to breathe around me, inhaling and exhaling in waves. The men walked in a circle, then stopped, their heads lifted, all looking at me, and the wind carried a single, crushing thought. Mountain had found a way to extend itself. It didn't need to take me into the tunnels anymore. It could reach me here, through the forest, through the snow, through the air. I understood then the ridge was only the beginning. By nightfall, I had returned to my cabin. Inside, the soot on the walls had shifted again. Every breath is mine. And outside, the forest pulsed with light. Branches bent inward, roots creaked. Snow lifted in spirals, and whispers filled every corner. The mountain's hunger had left the ridge, and now it was everywhere. Wind rises, low rumble under the ground, soft blue glow through the cabin walls. I don't know how long I can survive here. Every inhale reminds me of the mountain. Every exhale whispers of what's coming. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when the forest starts moving toward the town, when the mountain reaches out and claims beyond its ridge. The air in Harper's Bend was heavier than usual, even before I noticed the first tremor. I could feel it subtle, like the ground inhaling beneath my boots. The streets didn't just lie flat, they shifted, slight rises and dips, like veins beneath the earth pulsing in rhythm. I ran toward the town square. Doors rattled on their hinges. Windows groaned as the forest beyond crept closer, and the snow around the edges of the town lifted in faint spirals of ash and frost. The mountain's breath had left the ridge, and now it moved in waves. I saw the first signs of change in the animals. Dogs lay in yards, backs arched, twitching as if listening to voices beneath the ground. Horses turned their heads slowly, unnaturally, eyes fixed toward the ridge, then the humans. Old Mr. Callahan, who had gone missing for 3 days last week, walked out of his house as if sleepwalking. His movements were jerky, almost puppet-like, eyes glazed, lips moving silently. He stopped in the middle of the square, began stamping his boots in rhythm with the pulses I could feel under the ground. 3, 2, 3. The sound carried across the valley. From house to house, it grew louder. People stepped outside, some drawn by curiosity, some by compulsion. All began stamping, swaying, moving with the mountain's exhale. I tried to reach them. Stop! You have to stop. No one turned toward me. Their faces were blank, pupils a pale, glowing blue. Some had frost forming along their cheeks, as if the mountain's chill was seeping into their very blood. And then the exhale came. It wasn't wind. It was weight. The very air compressed, pressing against everything, forcing the town into rhythm with the mountain's lungs. Houses groaned. Roofs creaked. Windows shattered. Snow spiraled upward like smoke, drawn into the sky. The valley itself had started to breathe. I ran to the river. It was frozen solid yesterday, but today it bulged unnaturally, cracking with every pulse from the ridge. The ice shifted as if trying to rise. Fishes leapt from the cracks, but when they hit the snow, they froze midair, eyes wide, tails stiff. And then I saw the first of them crawling out, bodies from the ridge, the miners, the first ones who had returned, now hundreds more, skin pale and translucent, eyes glowing faintly, all moving with the same rhythm as the exhale. 3, 2, 3. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Everything moved with the mountain, now the valley, the snow, the trees, the river, the townspeople, even the wind howled in rhythm with it. I ducked into an alley. The walls of the town pressed inward. Brick shifted, as if it were soft. Cobblestones lifted and rotated like lungs filling. And from above, the ridge pulsed faintly blue, like a heartbeat I could see. It was calling everyone and me. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the rhythm penetrated every bone. 3, 2, 3. By nightfall, the entire valley was moving. It breathed as a single organism, the mountain at the center, lungs stretching through the snow, forest, town, and river. I hid in my cabin. Every door, every window, every crack seemed alive. The floor pulsed beneath me. Ash drifted in spirals from the ridge. On the wall above the fireplace, a new message appeared, etched in black soot. The breath claims all. I understood then, the valley wasn't just a place. It was part of the mountain now. And when the exhale comes again, it will not just take bodies, it will take the valley itself. Wind rises, low pulsing heartbeat echoing under the cabin floor. Faint blue glow fills the windows. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when the exhale reaches inside the houses, when the mountain's breath enters the walls, and what becomes of those trapped within the valley. The cabin felt alive. I could feel the pulse beneath the floorboards. The walls shifted slightly when I leaned against them, the plaster creaking like stretched skin. Every breath I took echoed back at me, heavier than air, as if the mountain was inhaling through me. I didn't want to leave, but I had to see what was happening outside. The town was worse than I imagined. Doors twisted on their hinges. Windows bulged inward and out. Every house seemed to rise and fall with the rhythm of the mountain. People stumbled in the streets. Some pressed their hands against walls, as if listening. Others walked in circles, eyes wide, heads tilted to hear the exhale beneath the ground. 3, 2, 3. Even the animals moved unnaturally. Dogs and cats lifted their heads, frozen mid-step, following some pulse only they could feel. I entered the first house I dared. The floorboards moved beneath me. The walls sighed. The air smelled like metal, frost, and something older like stone breathing. In the living room, a table floated a few inches above the floor. Chairs rotated slowly, following the rhythm of the pulse beneath the house. And on the wall, the soot spelled out a message. We are inside, now. I felt it. The exhale, the mountain's breath. It entered through the floors, wrapping around my legs, curling through my chest, filling my lungs. In the next room, I saw my neighbors, Mr. Callahan, Mrs. Whitmore, young Tommy. They weren't alive, not in the way they used to be. Their skin pulsed faintly blue, eyes wide and vacant, bodies trembling with the mountain's rhythm. And as I watched, the walls of the house bent slightly, pressing toward them. It was feeding them, breathing through them. I ran from house to house. The exhale was everywhere. Walls breathed, floors heaved. The air pressed against my chest, thick, warm, alive. The miners from the ridge were moving through the streets now, their steps measured, deliberate, synchronized with the rhythm of the exhale. 3, 2, 3. Even when I shouted, even when I tried to run, it followed. It wasn't wind. It wasn't cold. It was inside me. I found a small shed on the edge of town. I hid beneath it as the exhale intensified. The snow around me spiraled inwards, sucked toward the ridge. The earth trembled. Roots burst through the floor like lungs seeking air. Stone cracked, and in that moment, I realized the truth. The mountain doesn't just take the missing. It doesn't just control the forest. It can invade any space, any structure, the valley, the town, the people. They were extensions of its lungs, and I was breathing inside its body now. By midnight, Harper's Bend was transformed. The streets rose and fell. The houses swayed. Every shadow moved independently, yet in rhythm. Even the stars above seemed to pulse, dimming and brightening with the exhale. I could hear whispers through the walls. Not just voices, thousands of them, from the ridge, the tunnels, the miners, the valley. A single command repeated in every tone. Join us. Breathe with us. I don't know how long I've been hiding. The cabin creaks. The floor pulses. And every time I breathe, I feel it. The mountain's lungs, stretching through Harper's Bend, waiting for the next exhale. Wind rises. Heartbeat pulse grows deep and steady. Faint blue glow through cracks in the walls. Silence stretches after a long pause. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when the exhale reaches the river, when the mountain's breath spreads beyond the valley, and what the ones who've already joined the rhythm are forced to do. By morning, the river was alive, not in the way a river flows with current, but with rhythm. The surface rose and fell like a chest. Every wave, every ripple, synchronized with the pulse of the ridge. I approached cautiously. The ice, which had once been solid, now shifted beneath my boots. It creaked, groaned, and bulged upward like lungs inflating. 3, 2, 3. From the mist, shapes emerged, men and women from Harper's Bend, their bodies twisted and pale, eyes glowing faintly blue, limbs moving in ways that seemed both human and wrong. They stepped into the river, not to wade or swim, but to merge. The water climbed their legs, infiltrated their veins, and as it did, their breathing synchronized with the river. The exhale of the mountain flowed through them, and they flowed with it. I could feel the pulse from the ridge, stronger than ever. It traveled through the river, under the town, through my boots, into the frozen soil, roots, stones, snow, all of it rising, falling, breathing, as one. Even the air trembled, thick and heavy, pushing against my lungs. I backed away, slipping on ice, and nearly fell into the current. A hand shot out from the water. Not a hand made of flesh, but something pulsing, blue-lighted, part water, part bone. It gripped my wrist. Join us. I yanked free and ran. The whispers followed me, rising with every heartbeat of the river, repeating a single command. Breathe. Join the lungs. By afternoon, the river had changed course. It snaked unnaturally through the valley, swallowing fences, bridges, and fields. The townspeople, or what remained of them, walked along its banks in perfect rhythm with the exhale. Those who resisted were lifted by the water, carried, submerged, and absorbed into its pulse. I watched as a horse stepped into the river. It paused, struggled, then stiffened. Its eyes glowed blue. And then it sank silently, becoming part of the moving pulse. I realized the horror of it. The mountain doesn't just take bodies. It can control matter, water, snow, stone, soil, all extensions of its lungs. The river itself is now part of it. Everything that touches it will breathe with it. Everything in the valley is becoming part of the mountain. Night fell, and the pulse intensified. The river glowed faintly blue, winding like a vein through Harper's Bend. The houses shuddered. The snow lifted in spirals, feeding the exhale. Even the stars above seemed to dim in time with the rhythm. And from the river came voices, hundreds now, merging into one command. All lungs belong to the mountain. I hid behind a fallen tree on the river bank. Every breath I took felt borrowed. Every heartbeat echoed the pulse beneath the frozen soil. The mountain's lungs had claimed the ridge, the forest, the valley, and now the river. Wind rises. River pulses with faint blue light. Whispers echo through the trees. Silence stretches for a long, tense beat. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when the exhale begins to touch the sky. When the mountain doesn't just move through the land, but through the very air above the valley. The morning sky was wrong. Not dawn, not night. A dull gray, shifting and swirling above the ridge. The clouds moved in rhythm, rising and falling like lungs, expanding and contracting. The wind whispered in pulses I could feel through my chest. 3, 2, 3. I stepped outside the cabin. The valley stretched beneath me, snow spiraling in spirals, trees bending unnaturally, the river glowing faint blue like a vein through the land, and above, the sky moved, breathing, alive. Storms gathered, but not ordinary storms. The clouds twisted into unnatural shapes, curling downward toward the valley. Lightning pulsed inside them without a strike, illuminating the valley in brief, eerie flashes. Thunder wasn't a sound. It was a pressure, a wave of force you could feel under your feet. I realized the mountain's reach was no longer confined to the earth. It could extend into the sky. The exhale could move through the clouds. It could touch anyone below. From the ridge came the first exhale of wind. It wasn't cold, it wasn't warm. It felt like air that had weight, thick, viscous, almost solid. It rolled down the slopes and into the valley. People on the streets stumbled. Some fell, their bodies rising and falling with the invisible rhythm. Others lifted slowly, as if gravity had become a suggestion. The mountain was pulling them into its lungs. I tried to warn them, "Run, get inside," but voices came from the sky itself. Thousands of whispers, low and insistent. Join, breathe. All lungs belong to the mountain. The snow around me lifted in long spirals, carried by invisible air currents. It wrapped around my legs, my chest, my throat. Even my breath matched the pulse. 3, 2, 3. I looked up at the ridge. The top seemed impossibly high now, reaching into the clouds. Blue-white light pulsed along its spine like a heartbeat I could see from the valley, and the clouds above twisted toward it, curling downward like a funnel. From that funnel, a gust of wind shot into the valley. It bent trees, lifted snow, swirled people in place. And I saw the first miner rise from the river, lifted straight into the air, carried upward toward the sky, their glowing blue eyes fixed on the ridge. I ran to the riverbank, desperate. The water twisted, lifted like a lung, and wrapped around me. The mountain's exhale reached into the river, into the forest, into the houses, and now into the sky. It could touch anyone, anywhere, even me. I hid behind a rock. The wind pulsed in waves. The clouds moved. The exhale pressed against my chest. forcing my lungs to match it. I coughed, struggled, felt my heartbeat sink with the pulse beneath the valley, the ridge, and the sky. And above, the clouds opened slightly. Blue-white light spilled downward. I saw shapes moving in it, shadows of miners, humans, creatures, all part of the exhale. By nightfall, the valley had become a lung, the ridge a heart, the forest, river, and town all tissue in its chest, and the sky itself breathed with it. I realized then there is nowhere to hide, no cabin, no riverbank, no forest, no hill. If it wants you, it can reach you through the air itself. And it wants me. Wind rises, clouds swirl with blue-white light, valley trembles, the exhale pulses in the air like a living heartbeat. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when the mountain begins to claim fully, when the exhale reaches every living thing in the valley, when there is no escape. The valley shook. Every house, every tree, every inch of snow trembled in rhythm. The pulse from the ridge had become deafening, vibrating through my bones. Every breath I took matched it. 3, 2, 3. I stepped outside. The streets were empty of life as I knew it. The townspeople moved like marionettes, limbs stiff, eyes glowing, faint blue. Some walked into the river, some into the forest, all in unison, following the pulse. Even animals lifted into the air, twisted by the exhale. The mountain had taken control. I tried to resist. I ran through the streets, dodging houses as they lifted slightly, as if inhaling. The snow spiraled around me, drawn into invisible lungs. The air pressed against my chest. Every inhale and exhale I took was mirrored by the mountain. And then I saw them, the first of the miners, emerging from the ridge, their bodies pale, translucent, limbs moving in impossible ways. They reached out, not with hands, but with force, pulling everything toward the exhale. The forest bent toward the town. Roots burst through streets. Trees swayed, leaning as if to grasp the houses. The river rose, carrying its victims into the mountainside. The sky pulsed above, clouds spinning like lungs opening wide, lightning streaking without sound. The mountain's exhale had reached its peak. It claimed land, water, air, and now every living being. I hid behind the remains of the town hall. The walls bulged and breathed. Doors rattled. Windows stretched. And in the distance, I saw the ridge taller now, glowing faint blue. It flexed, as though inhaling the entire valley. 3, 2, 3. The pulse reached me. It wrapped around my chest, my throat, filling my lungs with its rhythm. I could feel the valley breathing through me. I realized then I was no longer separate. I was part of it. From the river came the first scream, or something like a scream. It was muffled, hollow, then absorbed into the exhale. The snow, the forest, the houses, the animals, and the humans all moved with the pulse. The valley was now a single lung. I tried to move, but the air itself pressed against me. The mountain claimed me with every heartbeat. By midnight, Harper's Bend no longer existed as a town. It had become tissue in the chest of the mountain. Rivers, trees, houses, and people, everything synchronized with the pulse. And above, the clouds pulsed with the same rhythm, the sky, the valley, and the ridge, all one breathing organism. I understood then, there is no escape, no cabin, no forest, no riverbank, Nothing lives outside its lungs. The mountain has claimed all, and it is patient, waiting for the next exhale. Wind rises. Faint blue light spreads through the valley. Pulse echoes like a 1. Wind rises. 1. Heartbeat of the world. Silence stretches long and hollow. Next time, I'll tell you what happens when the mountain learns to move beyond the valley entirely. When it stretches its lungs into the surrounding mountains, taking everything in its path, the valley was no longer a valley. It was a single, living lung. The town, the river, the forest, all tissue in the chest of the mountain. And it was awake. The exhale had grown. It stretched beyond Harper's Bend, moving through snow and stone, climbing into neighboring ridges. Other mountains, silent for centuries, trembled in response. The mountain's lungs were connecting, merging, forming one immense organism. I watched from what remained of a ridge nearby. Snow spiraled upward, carried by invisible lungs. The air pulsed with a rhythm I could no longer resist. 3, 2, 3. The neighboring peaks glowed faintly blue. Rivers shifted course to feed the exhale. Forests bent. Valleys quaked. Skies twisted into swirling vortexes of wind and frost. Even the distant plains seemed to ripple, as if breathing in sync with the mountains. Everything in sight was alive. Everything moved with the pulse of a single, colossal heartbeat. I ran, but there was nowhere to go. Every inhale I took echoed the mountain's rhythm. Every step I tried to take matched the exhale. Even the wind pressed against me, pulling, bending, claiming. And then I understood the truth. The mountain doesn't just take, it doesn't just breathe, it becomes. Every peak, every ridge, every forest, every river, all tissue in its lungs. And now, it was no longer just Blackridge Mountain. It was the mountains, the entire range. I fell to my knees. The pulse filled me, every nerve, every bone, every breath synchronized. There was no longer a boundary between me and it. The mountains had become one living, breathing organism. I whispered to the wind, though I knew it could hear me. Is there nothing left? And the exhale answered, not in words, not in sound, but in rhythm, slow, patient, infinite. 3, 2, 3. The mountains breathe, and I breathe with them. Harper's Bend is gone. The forest, the river, the skies all claimed. Nothing remains outside the lungs of the mountain, and somewhere deep within the pulse, the voices of the missing echo endlessly. Their whispers join the rhythm. Their bodies, minds, and breath become one with the mountains. I am part of it now, and it waits for the next exhale. If you thought Harper's Bend was just a forgotten town, think again. The mountains breathe, the rivers move, the forests whisper, and nothing escapes their lungs. Thank you for watching all 16 episodes of The Howl Above Blackridge Mountain. If you felt your heart race, your skin crawl, or heard whispers in the wind, you're not alone. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story that will haunt your nights. Tell me in the comments, if you were in Harper's Bend, would you run or join the rhythm of the mountain? Until next time, keep watching and keep breathing. Asterisk.